Okay, hello biology. Today we're going to investigate a different type of question. We're embarking on the structure of cells in this unit, and we want to look at how cells have diverse structures, and later we'll look at how those diverse structures lead to diverse functions. But I want to begin by thinking about why cells exist and what their purpose is. And so when we look at life and living things, we see that all life is composed of cells. And the question is, why is this? Why is life composed of cells? And one of the things that I'd like you to think about is this idea of compartmentalization. And that is the idea that cells are basically a compartment for chemistry. Even the simplest cell is a compartment for chemistry. And when we look at what cells are doing, they are taking chemicals from their environment and they're bringing them together and concentrating those chemicals. And by concentrating those chemicals, they are forcing chemical reactions. If you've had a chemistry class, what you can learn is, one of the things you learn is that when more reactants are added, the chemical reaction seems to proceed faster until it reaches some limit, some equilibrium point. So we want to look at why cells exist and what's going on with that compartmentalization. And so one of the things that I'd like you to consider is that there are these fundamentally different types of cells. For instance, here this is a bacteria. It's a cluster of different types of bacteria. And all of these are members of the domain bacteria. And they are relatively simple cells. In contrast, we have really complex cells, cells that have lots of stuff, different compartments inside of the cell itself, where the bacteria is essentially just one compartment that is surrounded by a cell wall and a cell membrane. We are looking here at an amoeba, which is in the domain eukarya, and is a protist. And you can notice all of these different parts to it, these compartments where different types of chemistry can occur, and even within the structure that we call the cytoplasm. So we have lots of compartments in that cell, whereas the bacteria is relatively simple with one major compartment. We can contrast that with one other example, and that is a typical plant cell. And again, you can see that we've got the cell wall of the plant cell, and then all these little green circles. Those green circles are chloroplasts, and they are compartments for chemistry. So what's going on here? Why do we have this degree of compartmentalization? Well, I'd like you to think about it. Oops, wrong way, sorry. I'd like you to think about it in terms of how things are organized in life and living systems. And when we look at life and living systems, we can see that there's sort of a hierarchy. We have atoms that make up molecules, and molecules that make up organelles, and we have organelles that make up cells, and cells that make up tissues, and tissues that make up organs, and organs that make up organisms, and organisms that make up populations, and populations make communities, and communities make ecosystems in the biosphere. We have this hierarchy, and this hierarchy is something that we see in biology, all throughout biology, not just in looking at atoms to biosphere, but little things, even the basic biochemical processes. So what's going on inside of a cell? Well, complex cells have what we could think of as division of labor. Now, I'd like you to think for a moment about where you might work if you have a job. Does everybody at where you work, do they all do the same job? Well, if the answer is no, chances are different people are doing different things. And this is division of labor so that some goal, some task can be accomplished. So here, in this example of the job, we have all of these different people who do different things with one goal in the end. And when we look at the structure of complex cells, like the one that I showed you here, all of these different circles inside of the cell are doing different things. So what are the different things that they do? Well, when we look at all of those structures inside of the cell, there are these things that we call organelles. And these organelles do different jobs. And they can do different jobs because they create compartments with different chemistry. So what I'd like you to do is take a moment and look at each of these pictures and ask yourself, what are the different jobs that each of these things do, and what are the things that cells do that might do each of these jobs? So say it again. Looking at each picture, what is the purpose of each of these things? What are they representing? Because they are analogies. And why would cells need them? And where in the cells might they occur? So why don't you hit pause for a moment and go ahead and do that. All right, so hopefully you hit pause and you thought about it. And so we have a set of solar panels which are collecting light to make energy. And there is an organelle in plants that is their job. And here the computer is sort of an info center, information and processing center. And it's dependent on a code. And there's an organelle in cells that do this. Here the closet is great for storage. And there are organelles in cells that store stuff. And here the batteries are an energy source. And there is an organelle that is responsible for producing energy for the cell. And here we have shipping and packaging. And there's an organelle that ships and packages stuff. And here we have a security guard. And there is an organelle in some cells that serve as a guard. And finally, we have a turnstile that allows people to go in and out of a building. And we have an organelle in cells that do this as well. And as a part of the closing of this lesson, you're going to be trying to figure out which organelles do which thing. So I want to end just with a quick summary. Why are there cells? Well, cells do the work of life. They make up living things. They're the structure, they're the functional things. But what cells do is they create a compartment. And those compartments allow for life processes. And if you are a bacterial cell, you've got to do this all in one big compartment and figure out how to work in all of the space, the cytoplasm of the bacteria, and how to use your cell membrane on the outside of the membrane and the inside, but you don't have a lot of division of labor. However, if you are a eukaryotic cell, you can divide up the task of living. And in doing that, you have these things called organelles. And these organelles are the chemical compartments where division of labor can occur. And you can have in the same cell different chemical labs doing different jobs to keep the cell alive. Well, that's it. That's our video lesson on why cells exist and how they compartmentalize things. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.